on the season's finale of Between the Wheels.
It's fun smiling every time I drive it.
It's kind of got that Top Gun feel. I like it.
One part of me is like, oh yeah, I'm super happy, but on the other part of me is, okay, I need more power. No replacement for displacement. This is a Gen 3 LS 6-liter V8. It's out of a 2500 GMC Sierra.
You're 6 years old. Wow. So this week on Between the Wheels, we're gonna go check out a 1978 Corvette Stingray. It actually belongs to my best friend, and I'm not taking the Bronco because it's literally right across the street. I think he lives like 500 feet away, so it's kind of pathetic that I'm taking a car to go there, but you gotta take these old beauties out when you got the chance. I think him and I have wasted our life savings just going to the corner store just to have a reason to drive. So let's go check out this car. This is one of my best friends. Really excited. I've actually never been inside this car before, so this will be the first time, so let's go check it out. Hopefully this thing starts. It's been sitting here all summer. Pat, how's it going, man? It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks.
It's a long trip from my house. You're good over here?
Yeah, good walk.
Yeah, no, I end up driving, which is funny because I made a joke about that we still end up driving our cars like any reason you get.
Well, yeah, obviously.
I always see you driving your car to the local corner store to get anything, you know?
Gotta find a reason to take it out.
That's right, man. So this is your car, dude. Like, the cool thing about this car is this is the car that we've known each other since, God, I don't know, like elementary school, like really early. Like
93, 94?
Yeah, something like that. And like, I remember the earliest memory with you is you're like, I gotta get my vet. I gotta get my vet. And like, you always would say this. I remember like, you were always like so passionate about it. And obviously as a kid, you don't really understand it, but we were both really big into cars.
Yeah.
Like I remember we spent many hours doing like model cars and stuff.
Building
like,
models, man.
Yeah, people were doing trouble. We were building model cars in the basement.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what we were doing, and I remember, but it was always the vet. Like you always wanted the vet. So now you have the vet. So tell me about this vet. So what am I looking at here?
Well, it's a '78 Corvette T-top, automatic transmission, small block 350 that came in it. But I mean, originally these come stock with 180 horsepower-ish, I think. 180 to 220 depending on the engine, I'm pretty sure. It was more torque than horsepower for sure, but with the small Gara, the 180 horse. Right now it's got a 383 in it, so it doesn't have 180 horsepower anymore, which is kind of nice.
All right, so first of all, this engine's beautiful. I'm just gonna mention that it looks really nice, really well kept.
Yeah, that's what sold me on the car when I went to see it. It looked clean, and the bottom of it, there's no rust at all. It's beautiful. It's well maintained. Bushings are all new. Suspension works like it should. Like shocks aren't old or anything like that. 3-speed automatic transmission. Final gear is a 1-to-1 ratio, so on the highway when you're doing 110, you're turning about 3,100 RPM on that because it's got a higher ratio in the back. It's a 373. Did a couple upgrades on the engine because it was running super rich. Like you'd start it up and you just smell like gas.
So what did you do? Like what are some of the upgrades you did?
Well, first I changed the distributor. So it's not really an upgrade, it's kind of a maintenance item. Because we weren't sure, and when I bought the engine, I like changing the distributor and spark plugs. Yeah. The basic things to make sure that I know it's running well. We reset the timing, and that seemed to work pretty well. It was running good. It had an Edelbrock carburetor on it last year. Okay. Can never really tune it right. Now that I've got this one on there, and I know how it should feel. Yeah. It was definitely not right last year. Right. I mean, it ran and it drove, and I mean,
you had a lot of problems. I remember you mentioning you had trouble with it, and it was always running a little rich and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and hard to start, and so there was a learning curve. I had a Edelbrock 650 vacuum secondary on it, and I changed it to a Brawler.
Look at that.
750 double pumper.
Right.
Which the double pumper is not good for automatic transmission.
Yeah.
But I bought that in with respect to putting a manual in it eventually. So
right. Yeah,
that was the plan.
That was the plan.
Now, you know, maybe we'll get rid of the carburetor altogether.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely options, because you can actually get rid of the carb and you can make it essentially fuel injection. It's not like a true fuel injection, right?
Yeah.
And that's always an option. And that's something you were considering. However, you're not going to be doing that because you're going to be putting an LS motor in.
Yep.
If I'm correct on that one.
That's it. That's it, my friend.
And we're going to talk about that in a second. But before we do, let's continue with your story a bit, because this story is pretty cool on your car. So you wanted this car. This was your dream car when you were a kid. And how did you end up actually getting the car?
A friend of mine, when this COVID started, he had a Mustang GT 2000 convertible. A lot of issues, and there was a huge rattling coming from the engine. But it had very low kilometers, and it still drove like nothing was wrong.
Okay.
So he brought it to a couple of places, the dealer, a couple of mechanics. Nobody wanted to touch it because they thought it was something to do with the heads, valve springs, whatever. Like and it would be an expensive
Big
job.
project, yeah.
And with everything else that was wrong with the car, it wouldn't be really worth putting the money into fixing it, you know what I mean? When I got it, it had a huge dent in the fender. The top didn't go up and down. The power locks didn't work.
Yeah.
Needed some love, you know. Managed to get the noise out. It was just like a broken plastic piece that covered the PCV valve.
Okay.
So I just took the valve cover off, and
that's all it was, eh?
It was just loose in there kicking around.
Wow.
It had no chips off of it, so I'm assuming nothing got into the engine oil. When I did the oil change, I didn't see anything in there. So, you know, and it drove fine. It had lots of torque, had lots of power, and so didn't throw any codes.
Yeah.
It was really good. It was kind of fun because fixing the dent in the fender, I did myself. I did all the metal work, got it pretty straight. A little bit of Bondo in there, not a whole lot. Then did that, repainted it in my garage, and it turned out wet sanded, polished it.
Nice.
Then I wet sanded the whole car, polished the car.
Oh wow.
I replaced the cylinder locks so that the power locks would work.
Yeah.
I refilled the reservoir with I think it was automatic transmission fluid for the top going up and down.
Okay.
But it was basically just empty.
So you just found, like, problem after problem, you just, even though you've never done this stuff before, you just took one issue at a time, knocked her off, and there you go. Like, that's the beauty of these things. You just got to have the confidence to do this stuff.
Just did the research, and
just got to do it,
Then I put a whole new suspension underneath it, lowered it a couple, I think it was like 1.5 inches all the way around.
Right.
Because the shocks were done, the springs were kind of, you know, it gave it a nice stance. Made it look good, and then I went to the junkyard and actually found a hood scoop from like a newer model GT.
Oh, nice.
And I managed to retrofit that onto the car to give it a good look. Yeah, and then, so I spoke to the guy that gave it, because he did give it to me, right?
Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine, Mark, and I didn't, the plan wasn't to make money on the car, you know?
No.
The plan was just to have something fun to work on, because he knew that I liked doing that and learn on. So when I pitched the idea that I found a car I wanted to buy, but it would entail me selling his Mustang that he gave me, you know, he didn't bat an eye. He was like, yes, Pat,
really?
Go do it. Oh yeah, Mark, he's super supportive and nicest guy you'll ever meet.
That's so cool, man, and that's awesome, because it's a dream of yours, and then you did something truly amazing by learning how to fix that car when no one really wanted to touch. So you know what I mean? I'm sure he was happy to see that at the same time.
Dude, he was shocked. He was like, that was it?
Yeah.
And
that's the fulfilling thing about doing these projects.
That's it.
I know the feeling. And then you bought your dream car. So you built your way up, man.
Ever since I was like 12 years old.
Yeah.
When one of the neighbors on my street had a black one, he would rumble by, and just always wanted one.
And you got it, man.
I was bitten.
That's cool. That's really cool, man. I'm super happy you were able to get this thing, and it's a great looking car. Maybe tell us about some of the features, because I see a lot of stuff here to talk about on the car.
Everything else is pretty much stock. The rims are a little beat up. I put side pipes on it.
Right.
So it's a lot louder than it should be.
So maybe it's not as loud as some of the neighbors wanted to be.
Yeah, exactly. I will ask the neighbors. And I did some stuff on it, like I changed the gauges, because when I got it, it had crappy digital gauges in it that weren't really working.
Yeah.
So I replaced all that with, they're not great gauges either, but they work a lot better. They're all electronic. Put an O2 sensor and AFR in it, so I know how to tune the carb. And then the rest were just kind of vacuum gauge, fuel, your basic coolant, oil pressure, oil temp. Oil pressure was the one I really wanted hooked up. Make sure that you don't kill your engine, you know?
Yep, I know what that's like. I got no gauges in my Jeep, none. Just the speed.
Man, you're crazy.
And speed and the fuel gauge. That's why I don't drive it.
Like living on the wild side, eh?
No, that's the stupid side more than anything. Anyways, that's the way she goes with these older vehicles. So you've done a lot of work here, and you've really, like, even just since you've got this thing, you've learned so many different things on it, and
yeah, it's amazing what you can learn. I mean, you need to buy a couple like tools there. I had to buy a timing light and learn how to make like AN hoses, things like that, and weird size wrenches and ratchets that you didn't have.
Right.
But learning how to set timing was kind of the biggest thing. Trying to
not easy to do.
Well, it was, yeah, it's not hard to do. It's just trying to understand the timing. Took me a little bit to like how to do it in before top dead center and advance and retard and so there's and then getting your like ignition curves in there too, so you have 36 degrees all in. Yeah. So yeah, it took a lot of learning. Yeah. Thank you, Roadkill. Yeah. And
you just got to start with something that inspires you and go from there.
Yeah, yeah. I watched a show called Engine Masters, and they did a lot of good knowledge, and they explained it pretty well. Nice. And then YouTube and the internet after that, and trial and error.
So this is great stuff.
And I love it. It's fun to work on the engine. Yeah. You get it running right, and once it gets going and just purrs, you're like, oh man.
But you know what? This is not the only project that you want to do, because you actually want to swap this engine.
Yep. It's going to be an LS. I'm going LS. I resisted as long as I could.
All right, let's talk about that. So this is an LS motor.
This is an LS.
And you told me you're going to pull an engine out of the junkyard, and you did.
I did, yeah. Not by myself, with the help of Sylvain, my dad, thankfully, but...
So tell us about this crazy project. And first of all, tell us about what an LS engine is and what the swap is and why people want to do it.
Like an LS is a V8, it was a Gen 3 and up. There's a couple LTs in there which are loosely based off the LS if I'm not mistaken. Right. But yeah, this is a Gen 3 LS. There's a Gen 4 as well from, I think it was 04 and up. I'm not 100% sure on the years of the LS engine, but they were introduced in the 97 Corvette. This is a 6-liter V8. It's out of a 2500 GMC Sierra, 2003 year. I don't know how many kilometers are on it because I don't really care. It's going to be torn down to the block and rebuilt. Oh,
so you're rebuilding it so you don't have to worry about any sort of what's been done to it?
Yeah, I mean you have to worry a little bit, make sure there's no cracks in the block, and it's nice to find one that was taken care of, so there's no scores in the cylinder wall. Things like that could save you some money down the road. Okay. The C5 Corvette had the LS1 in it, which made, I think it was 340, 345 horse. Okay. Aluminum engine, aluminum heads. Just a good, it's a good base to build an engine off of. The heads are really, really efficient. Like on the old small blocks, you run almost 40 degrees of timing if you have like a good head and some good power. On these, the timing, is 20 to 23 degrees after top dead center. So
what does that translate to in terms of
It's efficiency. So you're burning all the fuel that you put in there. Okay. So you're really maximizing the amount of power that you can get out of an engine by having a good head. And that's what these are. Well, these are 317 heads. They're not the best. They're a rectangle port head, and it was from a truck, so it's going to make good low end torque up to probably about 5,000 RPM. The Corvettes, Camaros, I think the Escalades, some of them might have the rectangle port heads, they're called, and they're much higher flowing. They flow like big block numbers, which is like 350 CFM, which is that can support a lot of naturally aspirated power. That's a big reason why people go for this, because the stock bottom ends. You can make a lot of power on them. You just gap your rings, and you can really boost it if you wanted to.
So for people that aren't too familiar with all the jargon, basically what that translates to is it's much easier to work on these newer engines, and you can get more performance out of them than the older engines, right? Yeah. And reliability also, these are much more reliable than your old engines, obviously. Absolutely. And more fuel efficient.
Yeah, well, if you can keep your foot out of it.
But when you have the fuel efficiency aspect, then you also have the fuel injection rather than the carb. It's just more reliable and easier to work on it, as you were saying earlier. So
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of advantages to having an LS engine.
Yeah, and now that the small blocks are phasing out, parts are getting more expensive. They're not really hard to find, but they're getting more and more expensive because they're not as popular. Whereas these, everybody makes parts for these. So if you need anything for the engine, any support, you can get aftermarket. You go to the junkyard. You can get it directly from GM. Okay. There's lots of options out there, and there's a lot of different things people are doing with these engines. So.
And what are you doing with the pistons? I remember you mentioning something that you wanted forged pistons.
Yeah, well, that's the bottom end. When you rebuild it, that's what I was going to replace. That's why it doesn't you replace your bearings, your pistons. You can do the crankshaft if you want. Right. And that's like the heart of the engine. And then from there, you can recondition the heads. You can get new coils for it. You redo your springs and your camshaft. So it'll be like almost a brand new
Right.
engine, just with the moving parts are new.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the bearings and stuff that can go. Like, well, when I get it torn apart, we'll see how much wear is in it, and
Yeah.
that'll really determine what you replace and what's still good to use. But I mean, if you know, it's easier to tear it apart on a stand than in the car. So
Absolutely, and then having the forged pistons, having that hardened steel, it just ensures you won't have as many breakdowns, obviously, and you can push the engine a little further than it was originally designed to.
yeah, and I'm not looking at anything crazy either. It's a Summit Racing brand that I was looking at,
Right.
and they tested it to 1,200 horsepower.
Oh wow, is that what you're gonna do?
Yeah. No, that's a little much. I don't think my transmission will be able to handle that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you just know it's going to last. The main thing is that you do the gap on your rings, because what happens is when you boost them, it builds up a lot of heat in the cylinders and a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And it's the rings that usually expand, and then they push into each other and blow either the top or the bottom of the piston off.
Right.
And then you have pieces flying around your engine, and that just wreaks havoc. So, but the connecting rods also tend to break from what I've seen. So if you replace your connecting rods, your pistons, do your gap. I think the crankshaft should be good for about 1,000 horsepower if it's in good shape right now. We'll see, but you can always purchase a new one. If you want to do a stroker, you can go like a 403 or 408, depending if you need to bore the cylinders out.
Right.
And yeah, replace an intake, get a bigger throttle body, and pretty easy to make 500, 550 out of it.
And right now your car is automatic, but you actually want a standard transmission.
Yeah, that too. That's what I originally wanted.
Yeah.
The standard. But now that I have this and the power you can make from this, I don't know if this manual will hold up to the power.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to do a little more research on that and see if it's worth, downgrading the engine just to drive a manual. But the new transmissions that you can get from the performance builders out there, they shift very quick. They drive great. You can get like a fully manual automatic, if that makes sense.
Right.
Where you just shift it and there's no clutch basically. And that allows you to have like a two-step. You can do a trans brake for your launch control if you wanted.
Right.
You can, with the computer you're getting, you can do boost by gear, so it
Nice.
kind of help you with traffic, like traction and stuff. So there's a lot of cool features that the automatics will come with, and that's why I'm kind of leaning towards that, because it would be nice to have the trans brake if I wanted to go to the drag strip, or it'd be easier to set up a two-step type thing instead of, you could always put the clutch in and then get your foot timing right, the right RPM, and launch it that way. Yeah. But the trans brake is guaranteed. You're not rolling anywhere.
So what is the trans brake?
Oh man, I was reading about it, but it basically locks, I think it's first and reverse.
Right.
In the transmission, it's electronic, and it just keeps the car from going anywhere. You just push the button basically, and then you rev it up to your two-step, and then
see what you mean. Okay.
You let go as soon as the light changes on the tree, and boom, you're gone.
Right.
So, and that's what the drag racers use.
So you're leaning towards the automatic transmission, I guess, right now?
It's sounding like it, to be honest with you, is cost-wise and performance-wise.
Pat wants the 1,200 horsepower.
We'll see. There might be a tune in there where I could press a button and it'll go.
Yeah.
And then, like, if we get really stuck and my partner wants to take the car, then she can drive it too, and go from there. But
nice.
The manuals, it sucks because I love manuals. Yeah. But for this project, I think the automatic is looking
makes more sense,
better and more economical.
Cool. Well, I think that's a really cool project. We will definitely check in with this project as time goes on. But right now, we got to take the car for a spin. I've never been in that car before. Now, I've waited all this time. I see him driving around. I'm always like, I gotta go, and I jump in. But I'm like, no, you gotta film this on camera. Just chill down. So
I can't wait. It's gonna be good, and it's got the quiet mufflers on it right now, so we might be able to talk.
Nice. All right, let's go take a spin.
All right. Comfortable to drive.
How's this thing on gas, anyways?
Terrible.
You're not the first one to say that.
It's a lot better now that I got the carb tuned very properly. But I don't bother calculating it. Put it that way.
You don't drive it though for the fuel efficiency.
No, this is not a fuel efficient car. I mean, this is like, I have 2,600 kilometers on this, and I've probably put like 20 tanks of gas.
Right.
especially if you put your foot in it, you know.
Yeah. Which you do.
Every now and then.
Yeah.
Because I have to modify that centerpiece there. I have to chisel or sand it. You know?
You did a really nice job, man. It looks really, really good.
And then my brother actually 3D printed the surround for this. This is the stock cluster holder, I guess you want to call it. I'm not sure the technical term for it. But
wow, 3D printed, that's pretty cool.
yeah, I designed it, and then he kind of took my design to where it would be able to be 3D printed, and because the center piece there is the hard part. It has the LED lights behind. Well, not LEDs, they're incandescent or whatever from the 70s now, but there's lighting behind it basically for your turn signals, your handbrake, and hazards, I believe, or the other one.
Okay.
There's no like check engine lights and crap in here, but I did want to keep those functioning, so.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's good to have. So this is cool. And I love the interior too. The interior, it's obviously of everything stocker than that, but I really like what they did. This is a very unique interior compared to some of the other cars I've been in as well.
Yeah, it's small, but the sunroof T-tops really do help. The smoked glass T-top makes it feel a lot bigger than it actually is.
Yeah, like that's the thing. This is not a big car. Like I usually put the camera on the ground, but I can't even do that because there's not that much space. But with the T-top, it does feel pretty big. So you know, it's kind of got that Top Gun feel. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no trunk, so I mean, there's the little space behind me here.
Right.
That acts as your trunk, but there's no way to get in it from outside. You got to push the seat forward. Okay. So that's kind of I think it was the 80 model. Started with where the rear glass opens up as a hatch.
Okay.
So that's kind of the nice thing about the 80 model, which would have been cool to have. But I should look in to see if I can retrofit one or something. But
right. So this car had AC at one point.
I guess. When I bought it, there's no AC compressor on the engine, so it robs too much horsepower, I guess, but he thought.
This thing drives smooth, man.
It's not bad, eh?
It's I can see why you wanted this.
Just the sound that's the one thing I'm gonna miss is that when those secondaries open up on the carburetor and you can hear it. Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. It's a thing of beauty.
No, this thing has nice sound, dude. That's phenomenal.
But like you see, it's not, blow your face off fast either. It's got pickup to it. It's not terrible. It's one of you sit back and just the way you sit and look out, it's kind of, I don't know. That's why I'm smiling every time I drive it.
Yeah.
Get behind it.
That's right. You got that look on your face I told you about earlier.
It's just easy. It's not, and some people think that the old cars, they're all over the place and hard to drive. But I mean, this one tracks pretty straight. But at 100, maybe a little bit more difficult, but it's not terrible.
So how does it feel, man? Like to have this, like your dream, like to drive it, and like what does it feel like?
It feels great. It's like I don't know. It's hard to put into words because like one part of me is like, oh yeah, I'm super happy, but and the other part of me is okay, I need more power. Like,
so you're never really quite happy with it. They're always improving it.
Yeah, but I'm always going to be like that. Yeah. That's the problem. Is I'm always going to want more, and
it's like a disease, man. I know. I've met a lot of people that have this, and
and then once I put the LS in, and I can wrap the car and get the body kit and new wheels for it and whatnot, and put the suspension underneath it that I want. Once I'm done with this, I'm just going to buy another project. So it's going to be never ending. I would like to get like another square body truck or an old truck and put an LS in that.
Did you see how many cars are in my yard, man? Like it's a sickness. It just gets worse and worse. This is cool.
Keeps me busy. Keeps me out of trouble.
Dude, I'm so happy for you, honestly, because this is always your dream. And obviously, I don't have videos or anything of you wanting this when you're a kid, but that's all I heard when I was young. So this is awesome. This is as good for me as for you to have, because I'm just like genuinely happy for you, man.
Yeah, and it's funny because what that black Corvette that made me want a Corvette when I was like 12 years old. Yeah. The guy that we knew, the gentleman that owned it on the street. Yeah. And so when he was ready to sell it, I had almost bought it.
Really? I remember that thing rolling down. You're like, oh, there's the Vet. Like that's that one day I'm gonna get my Vet.
You grumbles but when he was selling it, I was only 16, and we didn't have the space really in the driveway. I definitely didn't have the knowledge to keep a car like that going, or the money.
Right, but what a better story that rather than just get it as your first car, you were able to, you know, take another car that was in pretty rough shape and fix it up and make something of it, and then earn your way to do that. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's a great story, man.
That in. Like, you know, I'm just so thankful for Mark and giving me the opportunity, and really, like, I knew I liked working on cars.
Yeah.
But when he gave me that Mustang and I actually solved the problem, you know, that kind of put in my brain that something that you could do.
Yeah.
Like, Pat, you just did that. I was like, holy crap!
Yeah.
I got it running well, you know, and then I had a shot at bodywork, and that worked out pretty well. You know, you make mistakes along the way, but
that's right, man.
You learn and you redo it. You know, nothing else to it. And pulling that LS was another thing too. Holy crap! And I'm glad Sylvain was there helping me out. He's a licensed mechanic, so he was able to give tips and tricks, and we would have had it out a lot quicker had I not taken the torque converter bolts out in the wrong spot.
Shit happens. There we go. Turn her on now.
Got some rocket fuel.
Rocket fuel? All right. All fueled up, ready to go.
Well, I'm putting 91 in the fall. It doesn't need 91, but when you start, it's better to have 91 and 94 because there's no ethanol in it.
What? You're not driving this in the winter? Imagine that.
People do it.
Isn't
and apparently, I mean, it's all fiberglass.
Yeah.
It won't really rust. The undercarriage will, like the bird cage.
Just the idea that people used to drive these cars that were so overpowered with rear-wheel drive back in the day, just like shocking.
In the winter.
Like, how did they not all die with like no seatbelts, half the cars? Or like the seatbelts are just like go over the lap.
I remember my grandfather had like I think it was probably a mid-90s Caprice Classic.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was either a V6 or V8, and we were able to drive though, but I could just see that thing just sliding all over the place in the winter.
Deathmobile.
And, you know, nobody put winter tires on back then.
No.
It was just like the all-season crappy tire.
It's hilarious.
That's the thing with it. I think with the modern transmission, this would be much more fun.
Right.
Because I think the Turbo 350, I mean, 3-speed transmission just doesn't do this engine justice.
No way. Yeah, it's the fine tuning that really makes a difference in these vehicles, not so much what's under the hood exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I've driven cars with, I mean, this probably has 300, 350 horse.
Yeah.
I've driven cars with that much that feel, you know, twice as fast as this.
Right.
That were heavier, but it's all in the gearing and the
gearing,
transmission, right?
It's funny, you hit the gas, my phone just went whoosh, flying. So it's got some power.
It's got the torque.
Yeah.
That's what the stroker really it gives you. It doesn't really give you horsepower.
What is a stroker, if you're to define it?
Just increasing the amount of stroke in the engine. So,
right.
I'm not sure what the small block 350 is in this, but I know in the LS it's 3.6522 or something like that stroke.
Okay.
Inch stroke. And when you stroke it to a 403 or a 408, depending if you bore the cylinder at all, you're putting it to a 4-inch. And there are ways you can go bigger too. Because I've always wanted a 7-liter, like a 427.
Okay.
I mean, a 454 would be sweet too, but with the LS, it's a 427 7-liter that came in the Z06.
Right.
So I was thinking, like, if I could stroke it out to a 7-liter, that'd be cool. But you have to sleeve the block and do a bunch of, because it brings the piston, it brings into like a sketchy zone for the skirt going out of the cylinder.
Okay.
If you go that big for the stroke, so the people say it's not really worth it unless you. And I mean, at that point, I think probably just buy a 7-liter.
Yeah.
So, but the 408 is a popular stroker combination for the LS. This is a 383, and it's popular, and I think these can go to 408s too. I know that I looked, and there's a 454 small block on like Blueprint engines that you can get.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Nice.
everybody's done everything to a small block, so I mean, really whatever you want to do, you can get. But yeah, it's basically just increasing the amount of travel that the piston does.
Okay.
Which gives you more torque.
Nice.
And horsepower is a byproduct of torque. So,
right.
In sense, if you can rev it out to 7,000 RPM, you're going to make the horsepower too.
Yeah.
But like, you know, around town and stuff, it's the torque that makes the car fun to drive.
That's true.
That's why strokers are popular.
Nice.
And I mean, more displacement, more horsepower, obviously. No replacement for displacement.
No. Well, this is the most Canadian thing ever. Drinking some coffees.
Ooh, it's hot too.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Gotta love Tim's. Yeah.
Good old Tim Hortons, man.
You know, no road trip is complete without some Tim Hortons.
I think I'd bleed Tim Hortons if I was to get cut.
Yeah, I mean, me too, man. That's awesome. Well, listen, Pat, there's one more thing we got to do. Everybody on the show gets something. One of these Between the Wheels hats.
Shit.
So there's no difference for you, man.
Sweet.
Well
Thanks.
deserved. You know, thanks for being on the show.
Beauty.
And it's so cool to have you finally tell your story and everything. So
I'm happy to share. Thanks for having me, man.
yeah, man.
It's nice. It's fun. It's a cool concept you're doing. And
So we'll keep people updated on Pat's projects.
yeah, more to come.